This is the story of something that happened to me a few years ago. I've never told many people about it, but tonight, I feel like I need to share it. Maybe because the air feels the same as it did that night. Cold, still, and a little too quiet. So listen carefully. Don't miss a word. This is a true countryside horror story, and I swear it still haunts me. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship and needed time away from the city. A friend of mine, Jacob, had a family farmhouse deep in the countryside. It was old, a little broken down, but it was quiet, and that's all I needed. Jacob told me I could stay there as long as I wanted. He even handed me the old rusty keys with a little smile and said, "Just don't go wandering at night, and if you hear anything, ignore it." I laughed. I thought he was joking. I wish he had been. The farmhouse was surrounded by empty fields and thick woods. No neighbors, no traffic, not even birds singing. Just the wind and sometimes the distant howling of coyotes. The first day felt peaceful, even healing. I lit a fire, made some tea, and read a book as the sun dipped below the hills. That night was my first taste of how strange that place was. Around 2 a.m., I woke up because I heard footsteps on the wooden porch outside. Slow, creaking, one step at a time. I froze. There was no reason anyone should be out here. My phone had no signal, and I didn't have a gun or anything for protection. I stayed still in bed, heart pounding, waiting. Then, knock, knock, knock. 3 gentle knocks on the front door. I thought maybe Jacob had come to check on me, or some farmer got lost. I walked slowly to the door and looked through the peephole. No one. I opened the door just a crack, enough to peek outside. Nothing. Just the empty field, glowing faintly under the moonlight. I shut the door quickly, locked it, and told myself it was probably an animal. Maybe a raccoon stepped on the porch, but deep inside, I knew those were human footsteps. The next day I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was just tired or imagining things, but when I stepped outside I found footprints, bare footprints, human ones, leading from the woods to the porch, then back to the woods. There were no signs of shoes, and it was cold outside, freezing cold. No one should be walking barefoot in that. The next few nights things got worse. Every night at exactly 2 a.m., I'd hear those same footsteps, always slow, always steady, always ending with 3 knocks on the front door. I stopped checking. I just curled up in bed, pretending not to exist. One night I gathered the courage to look through the window instead of the door. I hid behind the curtain, heart pounding, and waited. At 2 a.m. on the dot, I heard the steps. Then I saw something I will never forget. A tall figure stood in front of the porch. It was pale, with long arms and a head that tilted too far to one side, like its neck was broken. It wasn't wearing any clothes. It just stood there, breathing heavily, staring at the door. And then, it looked straight at the window where I was hiding. It didn't have eyes, just dark, empty holes. I dropped to the floor. I couldn't move. I was too scared. I stayed down there until morning. When I finally looked again, it was gone. But the footprints were there. Deeper this time, like it had stomped harder. I should have left. I should have packed and run away. But part of me needed answers. I wanted to know what it was, what it wanted. So I did something stupid. I stayed up the next night and left the front door unlocked. I sat in the dark, in a corner, holding a kitchen knife, waiting. 2 a.m. came. The door creaked open slowly, as if pushed by a weak wind. But there was no wind. I didn't hear footsteps this time, just silence. Then, I saw it. That same figure stepped inside, taller than I remembered, its skin pale like candle wax. It didn't walk. It glided. It moved through the room, sniffing the air, and then it whispered something. I don't know what it said, but it made my ears ring and my head hurt. I shut my eyes and screamed. When I opened them again, it was gone, just like that. I left that morning, didn't pack anything. I drove until I found a gas station with a phone signal, called Jacob, and told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I told you not to go wandering, and I told you to ignore it. It always leaves you alone if you ignore it." I asked him what it was. He said his grandfather used to call it the Hollow One, some spirit that lived in the woods and came closer if you noticed it. Jacob said it never hurt anyone who pretended it wasn't real, but once you see it, once you acknowledge it, it doesn't stop. To this day, I don't know what I saw. I only know it wasn't human, and I made the mistake of seeing it. I've moved 3 times since then, changed my number, even went to therapy. But sometimes around 2 a.m., I still hear soft footsteps near my window, and I never, ever look. So if you ever find yourself in a quiet farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, and you hear something knock 3 times at your door, don't open it. Don't look. And whatever you do, don't let it know you're there. This is the story of a weekend trip I took with my cousin Ethan. We were both tired of the city noise, the traffic, the same old life. So when Ethan found a cheap little cabin online, deep in the hills of a quiet countryside village, we thought, why? The pictures looked peaceful. A small wooden cabin with a stone chimney surrounded by thick trees and rolling hills. The listing said it was owned by an old couple who had passed it down through their family for generations. Sounded perfect for a quiet getaway, but the pictures didn't show everything. We arrived late Friday evening. The sun had already dipped behind the hills, and the sky was turning dark purple. The village nearby was dead silent. No streetlights, no people walking around. Just empty roads and that strange, still air. The cabin itself was just as in the photos. Small, simple, and kind of cozy. But there was something off. The air inside was musty, like the place hadn't been opened in years, and the walls felt too cold for a place that had a lit fireplace. We brushed it off, made some dinner, played cards, drank a little. Everything was fine, until we went to bed. Around midnight I woke up. I didn't know why. Just felt like something had tapped me on the shoulder in my sleep. I looked over. Ethan was still asleep on the couch. And then I heard it. From the woods behind the cabin, a soft, slow whistle. It wasn't a bird or wind, it was a person. A clear whistle, repeating the same 4 notes. I got up and went to the back window trying to see through the trees, but it was too dark. The whistling stopped. I waited. Maybe 10 minutes, then went back to bed, thinking it was just a hunter or someone walking through the woods. But at exactly 3:13 a.m., I heard it again. This time, closer, much closer. It was coming from the back porch. I held my breath. That same slow whistle. 4 notes repeating steady and calm. I looked out the window again and I swear there was a figure standing in the tree line, not moving, just standing there watching the cabin. I couldn't see the face, just the shape. Tall, thin, almost too thin, like it wasn't really human. I told myself not to wake Ethan. Maybe it was just a local farmer or someone lost. Still, I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told Ethan about it. He laughed. "Dude, it's probably a deer hunter or something. You get spooked too easily." But when we stepped outside, we saw it. On the porch railing was a dead bird. A small one with its wings spread wide. Its neck was twisted completely around. We stared at it for a long moment. Then Ethan went pale and whispered, "That wasn't there last night. I swear it." We buried the bird, but that whole day we both felt watched. We didn't say it out loud, but I could tell Ethan felt it too. He kept looking over his shoulder, jumping at every sound. That night, we stayed up late trying to act normal. Music, drinks, old horror movies, pretending everything was okay. But at 3:13 a.m. on the dot, the whistling came back. Only this time, it was right outside the window. 4 soft notes, over and over. We turned off the lights, sat still, waited. Then we heard footsteps on the porch. We didn't move, didn't breathe. The doorknob turned, slowly, like someone was gently testing it. It was locked. Then came a soft knock, tap, 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 and the whistling stopped. We waited until sunrise before daring to open the door. Nothing was there. But on the ground just outside the door were footprints, bare feet, long toes. And they weren't walking to the cabin. They were walking in circles, around it, over and over. That morning, Ethan finally said what we were both thinking. "We need to leave." We packed up, loaded the car. I went to return the keys to the drop box at the edge of the village when I saw an old man sitting outside, a tiny shop. He looked at me, then looked at the cabin in the distance. "You boys stayed in the Wilkes place?" I nodded, surprised. He shook his head slowly. "Shouldn't have done that." I asked him why. He leaned forward, voice low. "That cabin's been empty since '92. Belonged to the Wilkes family. Strange folk. Said they used to feed the woods every night. No one knew what that meant. Then one winter, they all vanished. Doors wide open, fire still burning, no one found them, just gone." I asked him about the whistling. He looked at me dead serious. "You heard it, didn't you? 4 notes? Always at 3:13? I nodded again. He said, "That ain't whistling. It's calling. If you answer it even just once, it finds you. Doesn't matter where you go, you'll hear it again. Maybe not tonight, maybe not next week, but it'll come back, looking for the one who heard the call." I didn't say anything after that. I just got in the car and we drove. We didn't talk the whole ride back. Weeks went by. I started to forget, or maybe I just wanted to, until one night. I was back home in the city, high up in my apartment building, middle of the night. I was brushing my teeth when I froze. Outside my bathroom window, I heard it. Soft. Slow. 4 notes. Whistled through the wind. I live on the 10th floor. There's no balcony, no ledge. But I swear, I saw a shadow standing just outside the glass. Tall, thin, still. I shut the blinds, closed every door, turned off every light. Didn't sleep. Since then, I've moved again. New city, new phone, no online profiles. I don't tell people where I live, but some nights At exactly 3:13 a.m., I wake up and I hear it. 4 soft notes, somewhere outside. It hasn't found me. Not fully. Not yet. But I know it's still searching. And now that I've told you this story, maybe you'll hear it too. If you ever wake up in the middle of the night and hear someone whistling a strange tune outside your window, whatever you do, don't whistle back. This is the story of what happened to Daniel when he moved to the countryside to help his grandfather. Daniel had always lived in the city. Loud cars, fast food, late nights. He loved all that. But when his grandfather fell sick, Daniel decided to help out. The old man lived in a quiet village, deep in the countryside, in a small house surrounded by fields, forests, and winding dirt roads. The first week was fine, peaceful even. Daniel helped with the garden, cooked meals, and kept his grandfather company, but then something strange started to happen. It began with the scarecrows. Yeah, I know that doesn't sound scary, but wait. There was a field behind the house, a big one, stretching far back into the woods. And in that field stood an old scarecrow, tall, with a wide straw hat and a stitched burlap sack for a face. Daniel remembered seeing it as a kid, but now that he was older, it felt wrong. The face had a weird smile. Its button eyes stared right at the house, and the arms, long stuffed sleeves, were spread out too wide, like it was reaching for something. One morning, Daniel looked out the kitchen window and frowned. The scarecrow had moved. Not a lot, just a few feet to the left. But he was sure. It had been right in the center of the field the day before. He asked his grandfather about it. The old man looked up slowly and said, "Don't talk about it." That was all. Just that. And he went back to eating. Daniel thought it was strange, but maybe his grandfather was confused. He didn't push it. The next morning, it had moved again, closer to the house. Daniel laughed nervously and walked out to it. He looked around for footprints, but the ground was untouched. No drag marks, no boot prints, nothing. Just the scarecrow, standing there with that weird smile stitched across its face. He grabbed the wooden post and tried to shake it. It wouldn't budge, like it was rooted deep in the ground. That night, he heard something outside his window, like dragging. He looked out and saw nothing. But the next morning, the scarecrow was even closer, almost halfway between the field and the house now, still smiling, still staring. This time, Daniel stormed inside and demanded answers from his grandfather. The old man looked him dead in the eye and said something that made Daniel's blood run cold. "It follows whoever notices it. That's why. We never look too long. That's why we never talk about it." Daniel stared at him. "What do you mean it follows?" His grandfather sighed. "It's not just straw. It's something else. It's been here for as long as this village existed. Before the houses, before the fields. It likes to be seen. And once it knows you've seen it, it comes closer every night." Daniel didn't believe him. Thought maybe the old man was confused or just trying to scare him. But that night, Daniel locked all the doors and windows, just in case. At 3 a.m., he woke up to a strange sound. Thump, drag, thump. It was coming from outside, slow, heavy, like something big dragging across the ground. He crept to the window and pulled back the curtain just an inch. And there it was, the scarecrow standing right in front of the window, no post, no pole, just standing there on its own, arms still wide, straw hands hanging loose, head tilted like it was listening. Daniel stumbled back, heart pounding. He waited, frozen in his room until morning. When daylight came, the scarecrow was back in the field, but not far. Only a few feet from the back porch now. Daniel packed his bags. He told his grandfather he was leaving, but his grandfather just shook his head and said, "It's too late now. Once you've seen it up close, it never stops." Daniel didn't care. He got in his car and drove. He stayed at my place that night. That's when he told me everything. I laughed. I told him it was probably some weird local prank. Then I looked out my window. I live in the city, 3rd floor of an apartment building. But down in the alley, lit by the street lamp, was something tall, with a wide-brimmed straw hat, standing, perfectly still. I didn't laugh after that. The next few days were strange. Wherever Daniel went, he kept seeing it. In crowds, in parks, at gas stations, always far away, always watching, and always a little closer than the last time. One night we were watching a movie in my apartment. Daniel had dozed off. I got up to get some water. I looked out the kitchen window, and there it was, standing in the parking lot. But this time, it was facing away from us, like it was waiting. I locked the windows, closed every curtain. I didn't know what else to do. When I went back to the living room, Daniel was sitting up, wide-eyed. "You saw it, didn't you?" he whispered. I nodded. He rubbed his face. "It's your problem now, too." I didn't believe him, until I started waking up at night to the sound of dragging, until I saw straw on my doorstep, until I found muddy footprints outside my window, on the 3rd floor. The landlord said it was impossible, but I saw them with my own eyes. Daniel left, tried staying in motels, in other cities. He even left the country for a while, but it always found him. He sent me one last message 6 months ago. Just 2 words. "It's inside." I haven't heard from him since. I've moved 3 times. I keep all the lights on at night. I never open the curtains, but sometimes, even now, I hear something soft, something dry, like straw brushing against the walls, like footsteps that aren't quite human. And once, just once, I woke up to find a single button sitting on my pillow, just like the one on that scarecrow's face. So if you ever go to the countryside and you see a scarecrow standing alone in a field, don't stare at it, don't talk about it, and whatever you do, don't look for it the next morning, because once you notice it, it notices you too. This is the story of what happened to my buddy Chris. It was about 3 years ago, right after he decided to take some time off from work. The guy was always stressed, always working late, and he figured he needed a break. A real one, away from the noise of the city. So he rented a cabin in the middle of the woods, far off the main road. The kind of place you'd only hear about from locals, tucked away from civilization. It wasn't like he didn't know the area. He had grown up nearby in a small town on the edge of the woods, but he never really ventured deep into the forest. This was more secluded than anything he had seen before. Now, I've known Chris for years. He's always been the practical type. Skeptical, a little too logical sometimes, so I figured he'd be fine. Just a weekend getaway. It wasn't like he was out on some haunted battlefield or anything, right? Just a cabin in the woods. Or so we thought. He drove out there on a Friday evening. The drive was long, and by the time he reached the cabin, it was already dark. He said the place was small but charming. A rustic wooden house with a stone fireplace, a huge front porch, and all the quiet you could want. No neighbors, no lights, just trees and the sound of the wind. The first night was peaceful. Chris spent the evening reading, enjoying the solitude. There was a peacefulness to the place, he told me, that felt almost too perfect. Like the air itself was lighter, clearer. He went to bed early, looking forward to a weekend of relaxation. That's when things started to get strange. He woke up at exactly 2:42 a.m., his eyes snapping open for no reason. The room was silent, except for the wind outside. At first he thought it was just the stillness of the forest. But then he heard something, a faint tapping. It was soft, almost gentle at first, like someone knocking on the door. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't rhythmic like a normal knock. It was random, unpredictable, almost like someone testing the door to see if it would open. Chris tried to ignore it. He told himself it was probably just the wind, or maybe an animal knocking against the cabin. But then the tapping stopped for a moment, only to start again, louder this time. He got out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and went to the door. There was nothing outside, no one there. He stepped outside onto the porch, shining the flashlight into the dark woods. Just the trees, just the deep shadows that stretched across the ground. He shrugged it off and went back inside, locking the door behind him. Probably just some weird sound in the woods, he thought. Nothing to worry about. But that night, it didn't stop. Kakia. Tapping came again, this time with a low scratching sound. Tap, scrape, tap, scrape. It was coming from the wooden panels of the door, like something or someone was dragging their fingers across it. It was so clear, so distinct. It made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He couldn't ignore it anymore. But when he opened the door again, nothing. The porch was empty, and the wind was still. The air, however, was colder now, like something had shifted in the forest. He shut the door quickly and locked it again, this time double-checking. But that wasn't the end of it. That was just the beginning. The next morning, he woke up to find marks on the door. Scratches. Long, deep, wide gashes that ran from top to bottom, as if someone had tried to claw their way inside. Chris immediately thought it was an animal. Maybe a bear or something, he reasoned. So he went out to check the surroundings. He looked for tracks, signs of any wildlife, but there was nothing. The ground around the cabin was undisturbed, weird. But he thought maybe it was just the wind or some other strange occurrence. He was still thinking logically, still trying to explain things away. But that night, that was when things took a turn. The tapping came back, but this time it wasn't just on the door. It was coming from all around the cabin. Tap, tap, scrape, the walls, the windows, the roof. Chris was frozen. He grabbed his phone to call the local sheriff's office, but there was no signal out there. He was alone. Completely alone. It felt like something was watching him. He ran to the window and looked outside, his heart racing. In the dark, there was something. Someone standing at the edge of the forest, just standing there, perfectly still. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It just stared at him. Chris could feel its gaze, heavy and cold. It wasn't like a person. It didn't have that warmth. It felt like something other, something ancient and wrong. For a moment, Chris hesitated. His mind was racing, but he didn't know what to do. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure turned and disappeared into the woods. The tapping stopped. The silence was deafening. But Chris couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed him back into the cabin. Something that was waiting. That night he didn't sleep. He stayed up, locked inside, heart pounding, waiting for dawn. When the sun finally rose, he packed up his things quickly, not bothering to finish his breakfast. He didn't care about the cabin anymore. He just wanted to get out of there. The place had gone from peaceful to terrifying in the span of a day, and he didn't want to wait around to see what would happen next. But when he stepped outside, there was something new. On the porch, a piece of wood splintered and jagged, like something had broken it. And in the center of the wood was an engraving, carved into the surface with unnatural precision. A symbol, a shape. It looked like a pair of eyes. Not normal eyes. These were wide, hollow, and unblinking. That's when Chris ran. He didn't look back. He jumped into his truck and sped off, not caring where he was going. He just wanted to get far, far away from that cabin. He didn't tell anyone about it. He didn't even go back to the cabin to report what happened. As far as he was concerned, the place was cursed. I didn't hear from Chris for days after that. He texted me, telling me he was fine, but I could tell something had changed. When I finally saw him, he looked different, like he hadn't slept in days. He wouldn't talk about it, wouldn't go near the subject, but I could see it in his eyes. The fear, the dread that something was still following him. Sometimes, when I see Chris in public, I catch him looking over his shoulder. He says it's nothing, but I know better. There's something out there, something he brought back with him. And if you ever find yourself in the woods, alone in a cabin, with the wind howling and the trees pressing close, remember Chris's story and never ignore the tapping.